Joe Carson believes the Department of Energy should really be called the Department of Nuclear Weapons. Yes, the Department of Energy is the tester and designer of nuclear weapons. It is the lead federal agency for securing nukes as well. Now, Joe is a decorated veteran of the nuclear Navy, a nuclear safety engineer, and has had safety oversight issues in his portfolio. He has also been a thorn in the U.S. government's side. He is an 8-time prevailing federal agency whistleblower and believes still not enough is being done to protect those workers who want to bring to light safety issues. He's here with us now. Joe, thanks so much for joining us this morning. First, why don't you give us a little bit on the landscape surrounding federal whistleblowers right now and why it is you feel like they're not being protected the way that they should be?
Well, thank you for having me. I've just recently passed my 40-year anniversary as a federal employee, including 6 years of service on nuclear submarines. So I think I'm probably arguably the GOAT, the greatest of all time of career federal whistleblowers. And my advice to other concerned federal employees is pretty dismal, which is, can you live with yourself looking the other way? If so, I really can't advise otherwise. Because not only do you likely face reprisal, you're going to be ignored. It's futile. And the reason it's futile is because legal ethics. You'll ultimately come up against an attorney in your agency, and that attorney will say, I'm a hired gun, my client is never wrong, and I will do whatever I can get away with to prevent any determination otherwise. So I'm really sounding the alarm because the Department of Energy, as you mentioned, is the custodian of America's nuclear stockpile. And if employees of the Department of Energy and its contractors cannot voice concerns, it has real troubling implications for the security and safeguards of America's nuclear stockpile. And the Department of Energy is, believe it or not, also the lead federal agency for securing nuclear weapons material around the world. The Department of Energy is also the single largest environmental cleanup program in the world. Believe it or not, the third largest debit on the federal credit balance sheet or credit liability sheet is the estimated cleanup costs for the Department of Energy sites, $500 billion and climbing. Why? Legal ethics. For decades, DOE, Department of Energy attorneys said, what we're doing is pristine and you have no right to look at it anyway. Ditto with this environment, the worker safety disaster in the Department of Energy. My whistleblowing in the 1990s played a positive, perhaps essential role in the passage of the law, the Energy Employees Occupational Illness Compensation Program Act of 2000. By that law, over 135,000 patriotic workers who trusted DOE with their workplace safety and health and whose trust was misplaced have received over $20 billion in compensation for being put in unsafe and unhealthy conditions without their knowledge, without adequate protection. That's what the law states. I'm just not making this up. Why did that happen? Legal ethics and DOE attorneys. For decades, they said everything is perfectly safe. And if you claim otherwise, you have no avenue to seek redress. So Congress had to pass a law to provide some redress. This goes on today. That's why I'm being ignored. The DOE attorneys are open about it. Joe, we're going to stonewall because you might be right, regardless if it contributes to a nuclear 9/11 or anything else. So I'm risking I'm 70 years old. My family's raised. My house is paid for. I'm really not risking that much. But other DOE employees would be risking quite a bit to do what I'm doing now. Blowing the whistle ultimately to President Biden, who has the statutory duty to take any action necessary to make sure someone like me can get a resolution of my whistleblower disclosures. And he's not doing it. Just 2 months ago, for the State of the Union, he wrote a letter to all federal employees, concluding with, I have your back. Mr. Biden, you don't have my back. You don't have the back of 2 million federal employees, and it could result in a nuclear 9/11 or other existential catastrophe. And Mr. Biden, the reason you don't have my back is because Kathy Harris, the chairman of the Merits and Protection Board, will not sound the alarm that people like me cannot effectively blow whistles. And you know why? She'll say, I'm an attorney, and I'm protecting my client. When does it end? I'm a licensed professional engineer sticking my neck out to protect the public, and she's stonewalling to protect her client in the name of legal ethics. That's what it's really all about. I wish the stakes were not so high. If they were not so high, I wouldn't be bothering. I can think of many enjoyable things to do. My life is pretty nice, really.
Mr. Carson, first of all, thank you so much for, coming forward with all of this. I want to get into how this affects, everyday people. We used to have, once upon a time, public utilities. We've seen the privatization of energy providers, internet and water providers as well. Have you seen privatization in the Department of Energy, and really the privatization of public utilities pave the way for public funds to be used more for nuclear in the Department of Energy, sort of ignoring the necessity of everyday people, getting access to energy in their homes to use at work?
Yeah, it's a kind of a complicated story, but we all saw the movie Oppenheimer last year. And after the nuclear bomb was developed, the Atomic Energy Commission was created in the late 40s. And it had a dual purpose. One, to promote the commercial use of nuclear power, commercial nuclear power plants, as well as regulate it, as well as design and construct the nuclear weapons. So in the 1970s, it was split off to where the NRC was created, which regulates commercial nuclear power, and the Department of Energy continued with its mission for the nuclear weapons and also the environmental cleanup. So I'm a little indirect. So when I'm talking about President Biden has the back, I'm talking about federal agency employees, not workers in the private sector. But frequently, federal agency employees are regulators, such as in the Department of Labor or the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. And then they have a duty to say, well, in OSHA, if someone says my workplace does not comply with OSHA standards, it's a Department of Labor inspector who's going to say yes or no. And if he or she cannot do their duty without fear or favor, that impacts private workplace public health and worker safety. Ditto with the NRC. If an employee of a commercial nuclear power plant cannot effectively voice concerns, and the NRC employee is afraid to report that because he or she fears reprisal or fears being ignored, then that impacts in the private sector. Boeing, the engineers were saying that the planes are not safe. Ultimately, if the FAA inspector cannot do their job without fear or favor because they feel they'll be ignored, as I'm being ignored, or will experience reprisal, such as the established legal record, then that Boeing employee doesn't have who has their back. And ultimately, it's President Biden supposed to have the back of the federal employees, so the federal employee can have the back of the people they're regulating, and the system is broken. And the system is so broken that the alarm to say it's broken is broken too. So like when you start your car, you'll see the warning lights come on as a test that the warning lights will be available if needed. And I'm saying that the warning lights are broken. And I worked in commercial nuclear power plants. You would every shift you would test all your alarms to make sure your alarms were working. And in this case, so I'm using that analogy, the alarm to tell President Biden, Mr. Biden, you don't have the backs of federal employees is broken because Kathy Harris, the chairman of MSPB, will say, I'm protecting my client, and it's not in the interest of my client to make that report to the president. The public be darned. And here I am, still employed, still married, still have a high security clearance, still a licensed professional engineer. I have challenged Kathy Harris. I'll challenge anybody. If you think I'm an engineer crying wolf, please file a complaint against me because I have a positive legal duty to be truthful and objective in statements such as this. File it with the Tennessee Engineering Board. I want a chance to make my case. I have been to the Supreme Court four times in the last 15 years, and my whistleblower disclosures are still unresolved because the involved attorneys play hide the ball. Stonewalling, just like stonewalling happened for the pedophile priests, went on for decades because the lawyers representing the diocese who were moving these pedophile priests around, they would stonewall. Ditto with the opioid epidemic. The attorneys would hide the ball to protect our clients. We have a real issue when attorneys will say, I'm going to protect my client, a $27 billion federal agency responsible for nuclear weapon security, just as if it were a common criminal. No, it's the stakes are too high when these lawyers put protecting my client above every other consideration.
Well, Joe,
that's my message.
We appreciate you coming on the program today and giving us the lay of the land, what it looks like for federal whistleblowers right now. I appreciate your work very much, and hope to have you back another time. We'll be back with more Rising after this.
Well, I hope that you'll get Kathy Harris to answer some questions. Then we'll get some answers, or you will see her stonewalling up close and personal. Thank you.